This week's podcast episode was originally broadcast in September 2025 during our Social Talent Live webinar. If you missed this free event when it was broadcasted live, be sure to sign up for the next one over on socialtalent.com/live.
So second guest, as I mentioned, Ilka Sagner-David is the Head of Talent Discovery, Solutions and Innovations at SAP. SAP may be known to many of you as you may be customers of SAP using their software products across your business. And Ilka is leading a talent discovery team across the globe and is at the forefront of looking at new technology for those teams. Ilka, you're very welcome, and thank you for making the effort to join us today. I know you're super busy and we had trouble getting the connection working okay, but it's great to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me, Johnny. Very happy to be here.
We've folks from across the continent. We've got Marcus this morning joining us from Chicago. Ilka, where are you joining us from today?
I'm joining from Waldorf in Germany.
Well, excellent. We're getting definitely very much across the continents. Tell me, Ilka, we started talking this year about SAP's potential need for something similar. We just heard from Marcus as to ThoughtWorks needs, very particular. They have a consulting business talking about the hours spent interviewing and saving that back so it can get more billable hours for the business. What I've learned is everybody's different. So maybe can you tell us, first of all, a little bit about SAP for people who don't know the organization, maybe the size, type of folks you hire in different markets. And then perhaps secondly, if you could just describe some of the reasons you're exploring interview intelligence, back to that business case side that Marcus mentioned.
Sure. Maybe just, for those of you that don't know SAP, we're a Germany-based global software company. We have about 110,000 employees worldwide. And as a talent discovery organization, we hire about 25,000 people per year. We deal with about 1.3 million individual applicants each year. And so you can imagine that means a lot of interviews that are happening at SAP. And one of the main reasons why we are looking at interview intelligence is that while we have made interview feedback mandatory from a system perspective last year, it was a bit wild in the past. We are still struggling with getting meaningful feedback into the system and really, then being able to leverage that to make informed hiring decisions. So that's really why we are now looking at a solution that helps us tackle that issue, because our recruiters, very frankly, have a lot more meaningful things to do than chasing hiring managers and other interviewers to put in information in the system.
So can you tell us maybe about any earlier attempts you've used? I imagine a company your size are using things like Copilot. Have you tried using Copilot? Because we use these tools every day and there's transcription built in. So what have your experiences been perhaps through other avenues rather than just the interview intelligence category?
Indeed, we have experimented with Copilot because that's available to the employees as well. And initially we were quite excited about it, but then we realized that, it produced like 30 plus pages long documents of transcript and not really any, real insights into that. Plus, we then also had the issue that it would still be required to input the, transcript that we got from Copilot into the recruiting system, to store the feedback in one place. And then people didn't do that because, you might think it's just a copy and paste, but it's copy and paste going into the system, putting it there, saving it, right? And so that was not really successful. So we had some technology there, but then, the human behavior just, didn't work out with that. So that's why, unfortunately, Copilot was not the solution for us.
So I'm going to wait to connect with Ilka because my connection to Ilka's audio is down. I'm hoping she can pick up and we can reconnect in just a second before we continue. So pause 1 second. We were trying to get over some technical challenges we had at the start. but we'll try and get that resolved with Ilka in just a second. Again, this isn't always a smooth process. We're talking about AI and technology, but sometimes the basics of technology pose challenges to us. Ilka, just making sure you're back with us and you can hear okay.
Yeah, I can hear you
awesome.
fine.
Awesome. Something that didn't come up in our previous conversation, Ilka, I'd love to explore with you, is candidate feedback. So how, I know SAP has always been, in my experience from working with you over the years, very focused on that candidate experience, that candidate journey, and bringing the candidates to the fore. So how do you think about candidate feedback in this journey?
I mean, ultimately, that's another major reason why we are now looking at solutions that can help us with feedback from interviews, because we actually want to provide meaningful feedback also to our candidates, right? Because I think that's something that everyone on the call experiences, that candidates really want to get something meaningful, no matter if they get hired in the end, but even more so the people that get rejected. They want to use feedback to develop, to make it better next time, to be more successful next time. And so actually our long-term goal is that once we have interview feedback in the system that goes beyond good or not great, that we actually leverage AI to also create like a personalized feedback for each candidate based on the interview feedback. Of course, we don't want to then automatically send that to the candidates because, there might still, despite all the training that we are doing for our interviewers, there might still be some inappropriate questions that get asked. And so we want the AI to prepare it, the recruiters to review it, and then, click the send button to the candidates. So we are actually hoping that way candidates feel that they get constructive and actionable insights from the interview that they had. But we are, of course, very mindful that a human needs to take the decision what we are actually sharing and what not.
So in the previous conversation with Marcus, we had a couple of questions in the chat around concerns about recording, not recording, privacy, etc. I didn't get a chance to put to Marcus, but for you, when you think about privacy and compliance, and I'm going to assume being a German headquartered organization, there's just even more scrutiny on this topic. So what are some of those challenges you've been talking through with your InfoSec legal teams and in the TA team, and what conclusions have you come to, if any, about your approach to privacy and compliance?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy topic, and I think for everyone on the call who deals with Germany or is even headquartered in Germany, you might have similar experience. It's not only the legal aspect, but we also have the social partners that play a big role here, because if we record the conversations, right, it would be our recruiters, and it could be seen as, performance and behavior control for them, for the hiring managers, the other interviewers. But overall, the feedback from our social partners is actually very good, because they want, to help increase the candidate experience, because they hear very often as well that people struggle with getting meaningful feedback afterwards. So that's why at least to a certain extent, they are supportive of that. And then while, of course, our legal team, and Marcus, touched upon that as well, is, very much focusing on the consent that candidates also need to provide. They also see huge advantages of this, because if, it comes to a situation where someone, feels that they were treated unfairly in an interview, if then we have a recording of that conversation, while we wouldn't share it, with a broader audience, and it would only be in case of a need, we might be able to pull it out and then, see who's really, in the right here. That's what they really appreciate about that. But then consent is key. So we will, once we go live, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, we will, ask our candidates for consent to being recorded. So we don't ask them to opt out, but they actively need to say, yes, I want this. And we expect that some people might not agree to it, but then, there's also, information out there about people that agree to their calls with like the phone provider being recorded. And you usually do it because you feel that there's something in it for you as well. And that's why we are hoping that actually the majority of the people will agree to the conversations being recorded.
It probably speaks to a question that Michael also asked around. He said, Ilka, my friends who are recruiters in Germany say that German folks are more protective of their personal data. Will candidates be keen on this approach? I think, from what I'm hearing, Ilka, that you're saying is that, you're going to go, to great lengths to explain to the candidates the benefits for them. And I think this is something that Marcus and ThoughtWorks has done as well. They've made it explicit to the candidate that we're trying to ensure a fair and consistent interview process for them. And this helps in the administration of that. And they actually published a policy I was only reading today, Ilka, which explicitly calls out to the candidate that by using this tool, the interviewer is only focused on their answers and only focused on listening to them and having an interview, not just taking notes and doing admin, which I think is part of the whole selling to the candidates, if that makes sense.
100%, yeah, because that's what is really meaningful, right? The conversation between the interviewer and the candidate. And if you try to take notes, then you lose a lot of what the other party is saying. So that's one of the selling points that we'll be using with candidates for sure. Plus, we'll, of course, also let them know that overall, this contributes to a faster decision-making and them hearing back from us a lot faster than, the recruiter chasing the hiring manager for a week to get some feedback after the interview. We'll have it straight away. And then we can also get back to people a lot faster than we can now.
And speed correlates with quality in this kind of market in terms of being able to engage with the top talent faster, with better feedback, more comprehensive feedback, more structured interviewing. But some say this feels like kind of an arms race, an AI arms race. Look, I've heard that phrase used. But how do you see it? Like, obviously, candidates are. I did only a session with the whole TA team earlier on candidate use of AI. So the reverse of this, rather than hiring managers and interviewers and recruiters having tools to support them and reduce the admin, the reverse is candidates are using, by all accounts, 50-60% of them are using AI, and many of them have in Zoom or in Teams windows giving them answers or feeding them answers, or at least that's the belief. Is this an arms race, or how do you see it?
Well, to a certain extent, it definitely is. But then, as you say, candidates are using it. So we also need to equip the other stakeholders in the process with the tools to make it easier for them, to help them focus on the conversations as well. And what we have done earlier this year is actually issued guidelines around ethical usage of AI in our recruiting process. So we wanted to make it very clear to candidates, what we see as ethical and allowed usage of AI tools during their recruiting journey, but also what we are using on the recruiting and, hiring team side. So we want to be very transparent about that and really create fairness and balance across all the stakeholders that we have in the recruiting journey.
I'm after sharing, just for our audience, your policy that you published on your career site, Ilka, and just shared again Marcus's in ThoughtWorks, their policy as well. I think it's a first standard in AI usage, just to explain how we might use it and how we expect you, the candidate, to use it as well. And that real candidate focus is really important. It's great to hear that coming in. So in the journey, again, Marcus and ThoughtWorks have implemented this and are seeing the benefits. You're in the earlier phases of this, but even so far, in terms of how you've engaged with your business, how you've engaged with other stakeholders, what lessons can you share with our audience who may be slightly earlier than you, only beginning to look at vendors for this? What advice can you give them that you've learned so far that's been super helpful?
So it's really narrowing down the problem that you're trying to solve. So why do you need that tool, right? What is it that you want to achieve with it? Is it, being more compliant? Is it increasing the quality of interviews and ultimately also the quality of the hires that you're making? Or is it, with the main focus on candidate experience? Or maybe it's all of those topics, right? And then what we have seen not only from this initiative, but also from others, involve the legal teams. And, we also on our side have an AI ethics committee that kind of, consults with us on all things AI related. So involve those stakeholders early on so you don't run into roadblocks at a later point. That's really, really important. And then for us, and I mentioned it earlier, don't lose sight of the human aspect in that case. So make sure that there's a healthy balance between, the AI tool supporting you and the human part in this, because that shouldn't be forgotten, that shouldn't be overlooked. And then, like with every, process change that you roll out, you might think that you're doing, something really great for your organization, for the different stakeholders in the recruiting process. But change management is really key, and it might take a lot longer than you think. So, factor that in as well. Make sure that you also have some very vocal multipliers in your organization that actually help you promote it with the rest of your company, with the rest of the hiring teams, and really share the benefits that they experience from their side. Not only you as maybe a recruiting organization trying to advertise it, but make sure that you bring the business on board to help you with the change management. And then lastly, transparency, right? Transparency towards your candidates if you're looking at interview intelligence, but also transparency towards the interviewers around what you're doing with that data, who has access to it. And are you using it for any other purpose than just, recording the feedback or recording the insights about the qualifications of a candidate? Because there's still a lot of, hesitation when it comes to AI. And, I'm not saying that it's wrong, right? You definitely need to be careful. But the more transparent you can be, the higher the trust is also in the solutions. And that is quite important to then help you with the change management and the adoption as well.
I love that word multipliers. Ilka, I'm going to be stealing that from you and finding who are your multipliers in the business to make these a success. Ilka, thank you so much for joining us here today to share your insights on how you've been thinking about this, some of the legal concerns. It's great to get the perspective of an organization that are probably in a very compliant jurisdiction, looking to really focus on candidate experience and balance that between the legal do's and don'ts, and to get your insights in terms of how you've approached it has been super beneficial here today. Ilka, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.